I think this is a good segue to talk about like getting into your first animation film. You want to learn Blender. What should you do? Don't do what we did. We bit off way more than we could chew. But I knew that going in. And so I guess I'll just explain my logic. My logic was like, I'm very intimidated about making an animated film. So you know what? Fuck it. Let's just go balls to the wall and let's just like make a short film, no matter what.
Yeah, you literally never touched any 3D software before, and then you were like, let's make a short film.
Yeah, not the brightest, but it was really like a mental reason for me because I wanted to get rid of that mental block of like, oh, that distant thing on the hill that I have to spend years to get to. And I'm like, let's just do it now.
It did work though. It did work.
I learned a lot of very, very valuable lessons.
The thing is though, a lot of people might not have the same motivation that you did or determination. Mm-hmm. Like you really, like for the last 8 months or whatever, however long it's been, you just like fucking put your mind to it almost every single day. Like you really...
Well, I'd say the past 3 months, I've definitely put it every day. When I worked a part-time job, it got very hard, and I would just like have a week where I just didn't even fucking touch the project.
Well, see, like you were like still doing tutorials and stuff at that time, like Grant Abbott stuff or whatever.
Yeah, I was still learning. That's fair. I'm a little hard on myself, I guess, for that, but because I was still actively learning a lot of stuff. That's true. But yeah, I like if I could change it, if I didn't have that mental block or that like thing bothering me, what I probably would have done instead, and this is the way you should go about it, is start off with really small, like 20-second, 30-second little, like one scene or like one little thing. So you can do like a bit or a comedic thing, or you can just be like a cool show off cinematic of like, I don't know, you get a bunch of model pieces and you just make like a really cool cinematic, like Netflix style opener or something, which is why that's the next thing I want to do. Is a good way to learn how to do Unreal is I'm just doing a small little thing in Unreal first before I start doing all of the next big film. Or what you could do, which is also what we're doing, sorry, a little rambled, is if you have a really big project you want to do that's like, say, like a 7 or 8 minute film, chop it up into pieces and write it so that it's in pieces. So like for the next film that we're doing, I literally wrote it in like a 3-act structure. So it's literally being split up into 3 separate pieces that you can watch on their own, but they really are meant to eventually be seen as like one whole thing. And then, yeah, start small. Like don't like try to have like a million effects and like super complicated stuff and like model everything from scratch. Maybe just like get models online. Like for example, we bought the diver model for like $10. We didn't make everything from scratch. The fish thing, we literally just did a really dumb, like stupidly simple Ian Huber tutorial where it's like you just take a picture and you just like draw over a picture and boom, you have a fish model. Like it was so easy that even I could do it. Like, and I'm very like beginner with modeling. So I mean, like what's a little different too is like I had someone that like you already had like almost a year of experience in Blender and modeling, so that kind of let me go a bit more, had the confidence to be like, fuck it, we'll just make a film. And I will say coming out, I feel much more confident about my ability with animation. Like I don't feel intimidated by like making a film now. But I definitely don't think it is the most efficient way of going about it. The fact that it took us like 8 months to get here. But I don't know, I could be wrong because there's a lot of like lessons I literally just would never have learned unless I just did a big project. Like even if I did a lot of micro projects, there's just certain things that you just will not learn unless you just get to a certain scale. Because a lot of the issues I ran into is because of the scale we were working at. Going back to the beginner thing for when you're working on your first like film or animated film period. And so this is a lesson that we've talked about a lot is plan. So like the big thing for me was like plan your shots. Like before you even start animating or getting models or anything, really like find art that inspires the tone you want. Don't blatantly just copy people's stuff, but like try to grab a lot of inspiration from other great artists you respect. So like stand on the shoulder of giants, and then, so like, for example, with the new film, what I've been doing is I literally created an artboard of like, oh, I like this shot, and this shot. I literally have a sequence of a storyboard already of all the shots. And then what I did is I literally drafted up the new location. I literally in Blender made a really rough draft for you of like, here are all the proportions, And I made sure that like there's no waste. Like we're not modeling things that will not end up not being used in the film.
Yeah.
So
like I knew exactly what locations to make and everything, and what areas are going to be seen and all that.
Yeah.
And see that kind of goes back to like how I was saying, like you probably just opened Blender and did that in like a pretty short amount of time, and it was so easy. And it got the point across for me. Yeah. Yeah, and it got the whole point across for me to start actually creating something really good. So, like, that's just what I love about Blender. Like, it's just so easy to do.
It's so much better than
like
just like drawing it out on grid paper, you know?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Like having that 3D reference, you know?
Yeah, I know. I've literally started resorting to using 3D for certain things like that. Like, I literally modeled... this was like a few months ago or something, but I modeled like a computer and I figured out like the dimensions and everything. And like, if I looked up the certain case and everything and seeing if like everything would fit in that case and all that. Like I did that just so I could like make sure everything was going to fit properly and all that. And it's just so much better than trying to like draw it out and try to like figure out the dimensions and all that, because like I don't know, like you can literally type in the dimensions and all that in Blender. Like you can work in a real scale.
We're like literally evolved to view things in a 3D format, so that's why it's so much more like tactile if you can just see it 3D, even if it's on a screen. So literally what I plan on doing when I move out and getting my own place is I'm literally going to measure the apartment, and then I'm going to do rough measurements of all my furniture, and I'm literally going to recreate it in Blender, because it was like so fun and it was so easy to do. And I'm not like going, they're just gonna be cubes, it's not gonna be like complex geometry, but it's just enough to get like the scaling and reference. But the other thing for like just to tie back for like planning stuff was I just had that thread. So yeah, for planning things out, that I didn't do with 3000 was I didn't make that really solid story, because I was figuring this out. We redid the entire project 3 times. Or at least me. I rewrote the script 3 times completely. This is after like the drafts. Like this is like supposed to be the final script. Like I've been cutting lines left and right, because that's the thing as a writer. I write too much shitty dialogue and I just start cutting it down because I'm like, this does not sound good. And just like simplify. The shot sheet I've definitely done 3 times. And so that's why it was tricky for me to like, boom, this is the shot sheet and we're going. So that's why with the next project, The Old Man, I did the entire process before we even got to the animation part. So like I rewrote The Old Man, I think 3 or 4 times. For some reason, it's always like 3 or 4 times for me until things finally click. I did the shot sheet 2 times. And I did it 3 times. Oh my God, this is weird. This is a weird pattern I had. I redid the shot sheet completely from scratch 3 times. And the 3rd time was when things like really were clicking together. And then I made a reference board. So I use PictureRef, I think that's the program. And you literally can just paste a bunch of pictures onto this gray screen. And it makes it so easy to just organize. I basically made a column for you to look at of all, okay, this is the sequence of the shots. And I just used a lot of art that inspired me as like a rough estimate. And then, then I used Blender as but what the other thing that I plan on doing for the next location in that film is I'm going to make a 3D reference of the apartment scene. And then what I'm going to do is going to make, well, we already have the 3D models for the soldiers, but I'm going to actually recreate X amount of shots instead of using references I found. So you have a more accurate picture of what each shot is going to look like. So that when you're modeling again, you know, like you have a gist of like, okay, the camera's not going to see that. The camera will see this. And this is the main point I wanted. If you want to be a director, so I forget his first name, but his name's Sandberg. He did a bunch
David Sandberg, yeah.
He did, oh my God, how am I blank? He did Shazam. That's probably my favorite film that he did. And a bunch of horror films. But literally he learned how to use Blender, just the basics, for this exact reason. He literally says instead of doing like hand-drawn storyboards anymore, he just does all his storyboards, or a lot of his storyboards, in Blender. Because he's like, literally the dream is that you could have moving camera motion in your storyboard instead of drawing arrows. And it's really not. So what he does is he creates a really basic mock-up of like with a bunch of cubes and maybe a basic human stand-in model that he got for free online on like Turbo Squid. And you know, it's like it's a stiff T-pose. It's not like even like a rigged character, I think. Although you could just
it's enough to just like get the point across for other people to like see, okay, this is where it's going with like the composition and all that.
And it is so much more intuitive than trying to explain a storyboard to someone, especially if you're not a good artist, which I'm not, and he's also not. So that's also why he got into it. And there's so many like free models you can get online that you can basically use. You don't even have to model everything yourself, you know? So that is like, so for example, for Old Man, that's one thing I do plan on doing before we really get into nitty gritty stuff. That's actually more so for me and less for you. This is more for the animators. Is like, I'm going to be animating all the camera pathways before I do any animations, because you don't want to waste your time animating something, spending hours animating something that will never be used. So like, that's why I'm going to do all the rough camera motions and all that stuff, and literally have like T-pose characters just like gliding across the floor before like investing all that time and like making it super realistic, the animation, stuff like that. So that's the whole like work smart, not work hard kind of stuff that you want to do.